But it's good to be back. Many of you know, especially if you're part of the 180, last week I was away. And one of the things that I get to do periodically, in a sense I have to do almost, is I visit with churches that are partner churches. And by partner church, I mean that they're churches that support us financially, and they pray for us, and they sometimes send teams here to help us. I mean, a lot of the things that you even see in the warehouse, if you go up, if your kids are in their kids space, some of the renovations, the painting of the rooms, the decorating was done by a church that's a partner church that came to help us. Now, that in no way means that we're a lazy church, but, you know, some of us can just grow in our serving capacity. Is that a good way to say it? That was a nice way to say it, huh? Okay, but just that we have churches that help us. And so one of the things that when I'm with these churches and when I'm visiting, they often ask me questions about Quebec. They'll often be like, where is Quebec? You know, I'm like, do you have Google here? Just look it up. And so they ask me about our culture, and I often say to them, you know, Quebec is such a beautiful province, but as it relates to the church and God, it's a very complicated place. It's a very complicated place as it relates to people wanting to learn about God, wanting to get together as a church. And so in some ways, I think about us who are here today. If you're watching on Facebook Live, we'll let you in on this conversation, is that you got up early to come to gather to worship today. You are an anomaly in this province. Most people are either sleeping or just getting to sleep in this province. And part of being here is saying that you're going to decide to live your life by a different rhythm. That in a sense, you're going to be leaders. Leaders do things that other people aren't doing. Followers do what everybody else is doing, right? And in some ways, when I get a chance to teach, or when I get a chance to encourage us, and when I get a chance to even talk about our church, I'm kind of get proud as a pastor to be like, I get to pastor this church with our team and our staff and our elders, that we're learning what it means to be leaders in a very different and complicated time. And so I'm thankful for you, because many of you don't understand this, but our kids and the next generation and people around us, they're getting a glimpse of what it's like to see leaders learn to do things that other people aren't doing. To do it sometimes when you're like tired and you're not sure and you're overwhelmed and you're like, this was a crazy week. So God, help me to learn what it means to lead and to model a different way of life. So this morning I want to talk to you about a person in the Bible that had to learn how to do this. They really had to learn to be a leadership voice in a time where the culture around them was very, very complicated. And to help you understand this book of the Bible we're gonna look at this morning, I want to ask you a question. Any of you ever remember growing up and getting a book as a gift? And a book had these pictures in it. They're called auto-stereograms. They look something like this. You can go to them. And you ever get one of these and you have to look at it, and the way you see the picture is you have to keep staring at it for a long time. Any of you get one of these? Like you look and you strain your eyes and you keep looking and you turn your light, I don't see anything. And you keep looking and you keep looking, you're like, I still don't see anything. And then all of a sudden the picture kind of starts to emerge and you see it, right? These are actually real ones. So you might notice the pictures coming up. Curious, any of you see anything? Yeah, some of you might see it. Those of you who saw something really, really quickly, you probably have great serving gifts. So if you're not serving, we need you for our Christmas kids thing. I tried. Okay, so part of it, yeah, you see a bit of the line there. And what happens when you look at these things is if you ever try to get them for kids who are too young, they hate this. You know why? Because it takes patience. It just takes time to see the picture. I'm going to have you go blank screen so they pay attention to me. Okay? Yeah, you can go back. Yeah, there you go. It's one of the things about being up here and seeing you all like, what is it? What is it? Are we going to win money if we get it? What is this thing? Anyway. So you can go online and look at them. But part of the thing that you realize when you play with these kinds of pictures for kids is it requires a lot of patience to just wait and keep staring. And if kids are too small, they hate that game. They're like, what is this? Like, is there a remote that comes with it? Like, how does this work? Right? And the reason I wanted to show you that is because this morning we're starting a teaching series on a book in the Bible that I want to tell you up front will require some patience to understand. It requires some intense thinking and listening and just wanting to grow in a deeper way. And for some of us, I include this myself in that, sometimes if we're not patient and we're like, can I get this really quickly? Is it all going to work? Is it all going to make sense? We can kind of give up too quickly. And there's this book in the Bible called the Book of Hosea. And this morning we're beginning a series for a few weeks of a book that many people have never even heard of or read. I meet people who are like, I'm a Christian. I'm like, hey, have you ever read the Book of Hosea? They're like, no. Okay. So we're doing a series on the Book of Hosea. And the Book of Hosea is part of a group of books called the Prophets. Okay? And it's this profound moment in the life of God's people when God's trying to say something to them, but they're not listening. Okay? They're just not listening. And one of the things God is trying to remind the people in the Bible, like he does with us, is that he cares how they live. Okay? Just think about that. Do you believe that God cares the way you live? Do you believe that? Now you might say, I do. Now, this week, will you live in such a way where you really believe that God cares the way you live? Right? It's easy to think. I think I believe that. But it's different thing to live in such a way where you're like, I think God really cares the way that we live. And a lot of people have different views on that. A lot of people are like, I don't really think so. I think God's somewhere up there. He's like some energy. He's up there. He does good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. Like people can, that's karma, and they mix that in with God. And at some point, the Bible's constantly reminding us, hey, the God who loves you and the God who cares about you pays attention to how we live. And this prophet, many of the prophets, but Hosea in particular, is going to try to remind people who don't believe that anymore. They're like, we can do whatever we want. It's not a big deal. Like, we know God loves us. And if we're struggling, like, we'll pray. But we don't really have time for God. Like, we got life. Like, I got life to do. I got kids. I got bills. Like, God's just there, and I'll call on him when things are bad, or something like that. And Hosea is this prophet who's trying to say to the people, listen, God is trying to get your attention, but you're not listening. God has been trying to speak to you in a loving way, in a caring way, in a reminder that there's a certain way to live, and if you don't live that way, there's consequences. And they're like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. Just think about this. When's the last time you felt somebody was ignoring you? Think about the feeling. You're like, this morning, whatever, think about it. Maybe you're married to somebody, you had a bad week, and you're like, I asked you to help me with this, and help me with this, and you didn't help me. Our marriage is not going to work if you don't listen to me. Maybe you're married to someone like that. It's okay. We all are. We all have moments, right? The last time you felt ignored. Was it a good feeling? No? We know like it's one of the most essential human things is to feel that somebody not only hears us, but they really understand what we're saying. Like they really feel what we're feeling. Imagine being God and saying to people, you're ignoring me. And you're not listening to me now. And now I have to speak to you in a bigger way. Kind of a louder way. It's like almost like, give me the microphone now. I'm going to speak now and they're going to listen. Now they're going to listen. And so God sends this prophet, Hosea. He'll send prophets at different times to remind the people that they are not listening and they don't even care to listen to what God has to say. Now, I've had times in my life where that's happened to me. There's times in my life where I'm very sensitive to God's voice. I feel like I'm praying regularly. I'm either reading the Bible, I'm serving, I'm paying attention to the people in my life, my kids. And there's other times where life just gets so busy and I'm like, I don't think I'm like paying attention anymore. I feel like overwhelmed and it's noise and all this stuff. And so part of why we wanted to do this series is to remind each of us that God really cares how we live. He cares so much that he's given us letters that we have, like we can read, of other times in history and other prophets. People were telling the people, listen, if you're going to ignore God and you're going to think that you can live life however you want, there's going to be consequences and it can get painful. So you might want to like pay attention to the stuff I taught my people in the past. You might want to pay attention to the stuff that my other people in the Bible had to learn so that you don't make the same mistakes. I mean, any good parent would want that for their kids, right? Any good parent says, I made some mistakes growing up. I don't want you to have to do that. Any of you try that, right? So when you read these prophets, one of the things that really shines is God's heart as a father, as a mother, as a parent, saying, listen, I don't want you guys to go through a painful situation where you're going to miss the blessings I have for you because you thought it was okay to live however you want. And so he introduces us to these moments in the life of Israel, these people of God, that have so much to teach us. And so if you don't have a Bible or you've never read the Book of Hosea, I did this week just to help you all, okay? If you go on YouTube or on an app that you have, you can listen to the whole Book of Hosea in 33 minutes, okay? You can't do anything for 33 minutes in your life. Okay, so 33 minutes, like one episode, 22 minutes, Netflix episode plus a little bit more, right? You can listen to Hosea while you're stuck in traffic and you're losing it. Just play Hosea. You can pick a nice, friendly voice that reads it to you, even though when it says God's going to punish his people, it says it in a nice way, right? And God is going to kill them, like something like that, but very, very nice. So you can listen to the Book of Hosea. If you're not into reading, I know a lot of people are like, I'm not going to read. Just listen to it. Because the Bible, actually, the way we have it, was actually first heard instead of read for people. They heard it, read to them. And so I want to begin this morning by introducing the series. And as we go on, you're going to feel like the series is getting like a lot more intense. And the beautiful thing about the series is really it's about a love story. It's about a messy, broken, horrible kind of love story. And remember, and to see the meaning of the story, you have to look at it for a while like a painting that requires patience. You have to keep watching and keep listening. And just when you feel like I'm getting tired, I think I'm going to give up. Why did I come to church today? You just have to stay with it. You're like, no. So if somebody next to you, like they're dozing off, you have the right to just do like one of these. Stay in the game. Like stay in the game today. Okay? So the beginning of Hosea begins this way. It's a powerful beginning to the story. You'll see behind me. It says this. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, son of Beri, during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the reign of Jeroboam, son of Joash, king of Israel. I mean, if you read a book in the Bible, like if you're new to Christianity and you start with this book, how many of you are going to close the book right away? You're like, okay, I'm going home. Right away, this messed me up right here. Joash, like we don't even name our kids some of these names, we get so overwhelmed. Why isn't there like nice names, like Bobby? What is this? What are we going to do with this? So that's why you go to church, by the way. That's why we learn together. So that you learn to not get lost here. And remember, we're looking at a painting that's going to take time. We just have to be patient. Okay? So I want to kind of give you an important few kind of context to understand the letter. That Hosea is a prophet. And a prophet was a person, oftentimes in the Bible, that God would use to remind people of things that they were forgetting. And prophets come in different times in the life of people. And in some ways, some of you maybe have seen this in your life, where God uses you in a very specific time in someone's life. You're praying with them. They're having a difficult time, and you say to them, hey, I would love to pray for you. And they're like, really? You're like, yeah, is that okay? And you pray for them. And in a sense, God uses your voice almost prophetically. Like it meets them right where they are in that moment, and you're like even shocked yourself. You're like, how did I do that? And God's like, well, you didn't do it. Don't get too into yourself. I didn't, so relax. So the prophets were people who were sensitive to God speaking through them to the people. Right? And one of the most painful things about the prophets is they often felt something that preachers feel, that people just ignored them. Right? I don't feel that because you all listen to me. But most preachers, people ignore them. Okay? It's like you're saying, hey, you're going to help. Hey, you think maybe you're going to help. It's not going to work. So Hosea is one of the prophets where he's like, listen, guys, I'm not even making this stuff up. Like, I think God is serious now. Like, you better start listening. This is a big deal. And right at the beginning of the book, Hosea does something that all the prophets do. They tell us the historical context of the people of God when they write. Meaning, let me give you an example. Let's say I wrote a book today, okay? And I wanted people to read this book 1,000 years from now. You know what I would probably say at the beginning of my book? Tomorrow is the day that we had an election in Canada. And our prime minister was Justin Trudeau, right? I would say that. So you would be like, oh yeah, so when people read this a long, long time ago, they'll situate where I was, that like I'm a real person, I lived in the real world, right? And this is a beautiful way that the prophets try to say, listen, if you're not sure when you read this, this is where we were when this happened. Israel, the people of God, had different kings at this time, and these are some of their names. And the kingdom of God, think about regions, the kingdom, of Israel was split up in two parts, okay? Everyone just say two parts. Okay, everyone say two parts. 2 parts. It's very, very easy. It's not even hard. 2 parts. The northern people of God called Israel, and the southern people of God called Judah. How many parts? 2 parts. 2 parts. Every time you read the prophets, right at the beginning, the prophet's going to tell you, I'm writing during this time. And you're going to know right now, because you came to church, or you're watching Facebook, okay? You're going to say, what? 2 parts. I just want to know what part we're in. What's happening and who's doing what? So Hosea's like, just so you know, as I write, I need you to know about 2 parts. Israel, the northern kingdom, they're doing some funky things. God's going to speak to them. And Judah, the southern kingdom of Israel, they're doing weird things too. God's going to work on them as we go. Okay? Make sense? So Hosea's like, I just wanted you to know that I'm not making this stuff up. Like these were real kings in a real time that were acting in a real crazy way. So a lot of people, when they miss this, they're like, oh, the Bible was just made up a long time ago. Somebody just made it up and wrote stories. Like, no. They wanted to make sure that we didn't do that. So they told us, this happened during this time. Now, that doesn't mean that when we read them, every word lines up properly. There's sometimes we're like, that word can mean different things. But in general, it happened in a certain time. So to help you with the how many parts? 2 parts. 2 parts. I have a map. How many of you are visual learners? You're like, I love when Dom has maps. Woohoo! Came to church on a good day. We got maps. Okay? Some of you hate maps. You can go to bed right now. Okay. So this is just an example. So Judah is the southern part, and it's longer. Like the map is longer. I just cut it up so you can see it. And Israel is the northern part. Okay? Hosea primarily is going to speak to the people in the north. Some prophets speak to both. Some just speak to the south. Israel is going to speak to the north. Okay? And this is what we're told in 2 Kings about what's happening in that area in the north. Just so we know, like, are the people doing good? Is it a good season? Is it snowing? Like, what's happening there? Here we go. Jeroboam became king in Samaria. And I put a nice arrow there. Samaria is the capital of the northern Israel. And he reigned 41 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebaioth, which he had caused Israel to commit. Are they in a good season or in a bad season? Bad season. This is not just like they had a bad snowstorm. This is not just like, taxes are going up. I don't like who's the prime minister. This is like, we have a really big problem. Like, God is upset now. And so I need to tell you something that's really important about the prophets that took me a long time to learn. And I hope that it doesn't take you a long time to learn. That when I was a young Christian and when I was learning about God, I always felt that the biggest challenge for people to say yes to God was when they experienced suffering. If you've ever been with somebody who's suffering, if you visit someone in a hospital, if you've ever had an illness, someone that you love passes away, and you're with people in those moments, you feel the weight of what it's like to be with somebody who suffers. And as I was growing up, I was like, man, like when people suffer, when they experience pain, they quickly begin to doubt, like a lot of things. Like I used to believe this, and God's supposed to do this, and some of you, I know your story, we've prayed together, so I know that feeling. I felt it in my own life. I remember years ago, I had an issue with my back. I hurt my back, and I had a herniated disc. For 3 months, I could not walk. Thankfully, we didn't have kids, or they would have killed me. But I couldn't walk. Bev would go to work. She'd come back. She'd find me on the floor. Like, I just couldn't move my body. I was a pastor at a church. I was a youth pastor. I wanted to serve God. I wanted to, and I had all these prayers that I prayed. God, I want to serve you, so why don't you fix me? You ever pray that prayer? Okay, if you didn't, you should try it. It doesn't always work, but try it. So I'm like, I have all these prayers. I'm like, oh God, if you made me better, I'll help more and I'll do all these things. And like, I just didn't get better. 3 months, 4, I was just like horrible. So finally, with physio and much time of rest, I finally did get better. But in that time, God taught me something about how suffering actually can give us special moments with God. Special times that you only learn in suffering. But here's the lesson I really learned. That there's one other thing that's worse than suffering that takes us away from God. And it took me a long time to learn this. I didn't believe it, but I believe it now more than ever, especially after starting a church. That the most dangerous thing you can experience that will make you start to wander away from your love for God is success. Success is more dangerous than suffering. And I didn't believe that. I'm like, no, it doesn't really happen. When people are successful, when you bless them, they're going to thank you. They're going to give more. They do not. They're going to serve more. They do not. They're going to just remember that they prayed for you to bless them, and then they're going to be committed. They do not. Success has a way that it makes us forget that without God, we are nothing. And suffering has a way of drawing us closer to God where we need Him in a way like we've never needed Him before. And so you need to feel this because in Hosea, God is writing to His people through this prophet in a season where they have been successful. They've really experienced the blessings of God. They have kings, they have leverage, they have land, they have all the things they could ever want. But their hearts are insensitive to God. How are you doing with that in your life? Would you say you're in a season where your heart is sensitive to the things of God? Would you say you're someone that God could really trust with success? Are you that kind of person? That if God blessed you more, you'd really have the character to say, God, I don't even care about these things. Like you can take it all away. It has nothing to do with me. I don't want, my identity is not in any of this. Because the people in the Bible had a big problem with this. And Hosea writes to them to say, as God took care of you, and as God blessed you, and as God walked with you, and as God watched over your kids and provided what you needed, instead of being close to Him and honoring Him and living a life more committed to Him, you slowly started to walk away. And God's like, now you will experience suffering. Now that's what's going to happen. Now I know we can hear that and be like, that sounds really, really mean. It sounds mean until you have kids. Because when you have kids and when you're trying to love your kids, you know that there's some seasons in their life where they're only going to learn something if they go through a painful season. And you'd never be like, oh, that's really mean. You'd be like, kind of what good parenting, mature parents do, right? They let kids learn in different phases of their life. And God does this through the prophets in the Bible. He slowly says to them, hey, many of my people are insensitive to my voice. One of the things that the people of God started to do with their success is they started to take advantage of people who were poor. Can you imagine how insensitive you have to be? To have lived in poverty, to have been a slave, and now to think it's okay to have your own slaves. Do you think you know how insensitive your heart has to be to the things around you that God's like, I showed you all of these things, but you know what? You didn't care anymore. This happens to all of us. Seasons in our lives where I'll like God when God cares about the things that I care about. And God's like, no. You're going to learn to be sensitive to the things that I care about. And this is how Hosea writes. And he says, listen, I'm going to write to the people in Israel. And I want you to know that the kings that they had were kings that also had forgotten to tell the people how to live lives that were going to honor God. And you know why God does this? Because God cares for them. God really cares for them. Like if you came to my house and you see my kids playing outside, and they're running in the street and playing in cars, wouldn't you say, where are Dom and Bev? How many of you would be like, I don't know, Dom and Bev are not here, right? Wouldn't you automatically be like, there's kids running in the street, they're going to get hurt? Naturally, you would say that. You'd call the number on the milk carton. Hey, monsieur, you have to come and take these kids. The parents don't care about them, right? It's a natural reaction. You'd be like, is anybody caring for the situation? Through the prophets, God's like, watch how I care for my people now. Watch how I remind them that success is not going to be enough to help them through the season. And if you're taking notes, you're online, and you want to remember one thing, maybe remember it like this, okay? Very, very tight. Ready? God's people in the Bible, and we do this too, confused God's provision for His presence. Okay? The prophets are always reminding the people, never confuse God's provision for God's presence. That God can provide, and you can have a lot of things, and at some point, God's presence can even leave, and you still have all your stuff, and you're like, we're great. People do this all the time. You're like, look, if it's so successful, how could God not be in it? There's a lot of things that are successful and God's not in them. Well, if it's growing, it's got to be of God. Cancer cells grow and they're not from God. Not everything that grows is good. And so in the prophets, God's like, you've confused my provision for wanting my presence in your life. And so today, we get a chance to ask ourselves this very question. If you had to pick between God's provision and God's presence, which would you pick? I know the one I would pick. I'm like, provision. Because I don't know, presence is too mysterious. What if I don't feel you every day? Provision I can see, right? Like I can pay the bills, right? It's very natural to feel that. But the prophets are like, be very careful that as God provides, you will maybe lose your way as you forget that success has a way of moving us away from really being people who surrender to God and who are sensitive to the things that are on God's heart. Now, how do you think God's going to get the people's attention? He's going to do something so radical that nobody really expects. He's going to tell Hosea to do something that is mind-blowing. And just to help you, just for this introduction slide, I did something you'll see on the screen, is I have a verse that I want to read for you, and I have it in two translations. One is in I think it's the NASB translation. It's a translation of the Bible. And the other one's in the Message transliteration. The Message Bible, if any of you have read it, is kind of an easier read of some books in the Bible that are hard to understand. So if you've never read Hosea ever before, you might want to even just start by reading it in the Message, because it'll help you feel out the book. And so I wanted you to feel that both translations on the screen and feel it. So you'll see behind me. This is what it says. Here's what God says. When the Lord began to speak through Hosea, the Lord said to him, go, marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her. For like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord. So he married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim. So look in the Message how like a punch in the face it is, okay? It's powerful. The first time God spoke to Hosea, God said, Hosea, find a whore and marry her. I'm like, what? This isn't the Bible. Oh my gosh. Make this whore the mother of your children. I'm like, what? That's what it says. And here's why. This whole country has become a whorehouse. Unfaithful to me, God. Hosea did it. Let's just pray and go home. Like you open, you're like, what? Really? God's like, yeah. Like, people are not going to understand anymore if you speak to them. Just give them a symbol of what it looks like that they've been so disobedient. Show them with how you live now. Now, I think about Hosea like this prophet. Like, really? Can I just be friends with an adulterous woman? Can I just pray for a whore? Can I just pray for her? No. Find somebody who's promiscuous and marry them. You're like, wow, what are people going to think? Like, I'm a prophet of God. Prophets don't do this. It's like, don't even worry. The people are so beyond that, they won't even notice that that's what you're doing. It doesn't even matter how you live as a prophet. Just do that. Now, when I read this and I was studying this week and I was thinking, I'm like, this is such a powerful intro to a book. You're like, what? How is this possible? And some of you know this. Like, is this a good thing? Is this a real story? Is this literal? Is this poetry? There's a lot of books you can read. There's all kinds of perspectives on this. But I still remember the first time I told my parents that I had met the girl I was going to marry. It was kind of one of those exciting, weird, nervous moments. Some of you maybe remember that moment, right? You're like, hey, I think I found the right person. And the questions your parents ask, oh, do they have a good family? Yeah. And my wife, some of you know, is not from my culture. She wasn't either from Quebec or Italian or any of that stuff. So I told my dad, like, the girl's name is Beverly. Some of you know the joke, right? My dad's like, Beverly. And my dad's like Beverly Hills. He really said that. He's not here today, but when you see him, just hug him. And so we still have a Beverly Hills. I'm like, Beverly. And I can't imagine in my head saying to him, yeah, and she's a whore. I couldn't get to that point to be like, what? Yeah, she's kind of, you've seen her in these parts. People, different people. Like, you can't get there in your head. But you need to feel that, to feel like Hosea's like, how am I going to tell people this? You ever drive and you have people with the stickies on the van, you go to the van? Like, did you go to the picture? This? Any of you have this on your car? Just get rid of these things. They drive me crazy. If I see this on your car and I see you, I'm going to hit you with my car. I don't even care. I have insurance. This is ridiculous. You drive, what do your kids like this? Oh, it's good. Nobody cares. 2 dogs, 3 dogs, a parrot. There's the one for a parrot. We have a parrot. Hosea's not going to have any of this. And you should feel the weight of like, you're going to marry her, God says to Hosea, and you're going to have children with her. A promiscuous woman doesn't want to have children. You know how much you have to woo a promiscuous woman to tell her, like, I love you so much. Like, you know all the men you've been with? Like, you don't have to go be with them anymore. Like, I want this to be serious. Well, how serious? Well, I want to have children with you. Wait a second. I never met one of these men. Children with me? Like, serious? They're like, yeah, serious. How many? 1, 2, 3? Whatever. We're going to have a family with the van, with the kids. Really? Wow. The men I'm with are not like this. You're different. Hosea was like, I am different. This is going to be different. And I'm trying to be obedient. Hosea begins by telling us that he's about to do something that's going to remind the people of God how they've acted, but yet, in all of that, how much he loves them. How much in the midst of their walking away, disobedience, thinking they can live how they want, God's like, just find someone who's promiscuous and marry them and just woo them. Woo them to say, I love you so much. I've loved you for years. Even when you didn't know I was loving you, I was loving you. And Hosea decides, like, I guess this is what I got to do. Is this the next step? Is this what we do? There's things that God calls us to that are so challenging where we have to realize that God, like, I'll do what you're calling me to do, and I don't really know how this is all going to work, but I need to step in and trust you. And Hosea is going to model what it's like to trust God's voice in his life and do this. I'm sure he told some of his friends, and they're like, I don't think that's a good idea. You should pray about it again. I don't think that's what God would have you to do. This kind of sounds weird. And God, in a sense, is saying, the people are not going to listen to you anymore. Give them a symbolic picture of what it looks like for my relationship with them to be broken. I thought about this week as I was studying, and I thought, if God had to give us a picture today of how things are between us and God, what picture would he give us? Would he give us a similar picture? If God had to speak to you and give you an image, tomorrow morning you're going to wake up and the first thing that's going to appear on your phone is an image that's going to be a picture of how you're doing with God. What would that picture be? Wouldn't it be powerful? There's an app that did that. An app that just said tomorrow morning, go to bed, when you wake up, before you can even turn your phone on, there's going to be an image on your phone. And that image will give you a glimpse of how things are between me and you. what would that image be for you? Are things going well with God? Are you sensitive to the way God is calling you to be used in your family, with your friends, with your kids? Are you sensitive to God's voice in your life? Are you sensitive to how sins creep up? Success makes us think like, hey, we're invincible. I got everything I need. Maybe I'll visit church at Christmas. Are you sensitive to God saying, hey, slow this down. You're not growing the way you need to grow now. You're not trusting me the way you need to trust me now. What picture would be there? In some ways, I think the picture would maybe be the same thing for a lot of us. That's the beauty of the Bible, like its timelessness. That you can read it again and you're like, wow, I think I have moments in my life where God would probably say to me, Dom, like, you're not living in the way I'm calling you to live sometimes. As a husband, like, you need to remember, like, you have to trust me in a new way if you want to be a husband that honors me in your marriage. I'm like, okay, God, like, I get that. I got to do that better. Whatever that is. And then when we hear this, it can feel like this big weight. I'm like, I got all that stuff to do. And even feel like I just gave you homework. You're like, Dom's giving us homework. I'm not going back there. It's too much. Right? Instead of saying, no, God's like, when you do this, you'll experience my power and my presence in your life, helping you live this way. That's what God wants to give us. So Hosea decides that this is what we're going to do. And he meets a girl called Gomer. Pretty funky name. Gomer? Really? Yeah, he does. And this is what we're told. So he married Gomer, daughter of Diblaim. And she conceived and bore him a son. And the Lord said to Hosea, call him Jezreel, because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre at Jezreel. And I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. In that day I will break Israel's bow in the valley of Jezreel. What? Like, God's like, it's not enough. You're not only going to marry her, but now, when you have children, you're going to give the children symbolic names. Now, there's different scholars that say, like, part of these are symbolic ways that families in the ancient world gave their kids a real name and then gave them a symbolic name. Because it does feel weird that God would say, name your kid something mean, right? Like, all the time. Like, imagine calling your kid Snowstorm. And every time you're like, hey, what's your kid? Snowstorm. You're like, well, that's weird. I just picked something nice. But it would be worse. Even if you called your dog Snowstorm, it'd be mean. Right? It's like, call the kids something so that we can send a message to Israel about what's about to happen next. That Jezreel means very little to us today. Like, I don't even know if there's a street in all of Quebec called Jezreel. Maybe there is. It's not a word that we hear. So when you see it, you might be like, why is God concerned about this place? Because when you read the story of Israel, there's a moment where the people of God decide that they're going to slaughter Jezreel. That they're going to not only use their authority and their presence as God's people to correct evil in the world, but they're going to be so over the top that some scholars say that the archaeologists believe that they slaughter the whole region. Imagine God says, I pay attention to how you live and how you act. I won't forget how you used your power to take advantage of these people. I won't forget how you acted in ways that you thought I wasn't watching. I won't forget this. So name your first son, Jezreel. They're going to understand what that means. And God begins to do this and talk about this. Now, I think that sometimes when we read books like this and we're like, can we just get to the friendly part where God just hugs everybody and tells them he's going to # bless them? Like, when we get to that part? Because that's what most people like. But part of what we don't get is that this is God's blessing. Okay, if you remember anything of today, remember that one of the greatest blessings of God in all of the Bible, now if you don't care about the Bible, you don't care about Christianity, that's another class. Come to Alpha. But the whole point of the prophets is God saying to his people, I gave you commandments to live by because I love you. Just let that sink in. The commandments that I gave you to live by are a sign of my love to you. They are a reflection of how much I care about you. They were the way I blessed you and set you apart so other people would be like, these people, like they live by a different way of life. Like they just trust God in everything. Where we today hear the word command and we think it sounds mean. Like, why doesn't God want people to have fun? Like, why can't they just do what they want? God's like, because you can't. If you just try to do whatever you want, you're going to pay for it because you're not made to do whatever you want. And the commands in the Bible are a sign of God's grace. And so many people miss this in the Bible. They read the Bible and they're like, well, there's a lot of rules here. I'm like, they're meant to protect us, right? Just like, think about you're driving and there's guardrails, lights, right? They're all triggers in place that sometimes you're upset at. You're like, why does the light turn red just when I get here, right? But nobody's thinking, you know what? Next time I hope they remove all the lights in the neighborhood. Nobody wants that. If they did that, like if you had a chance, you'd be like, that's ridiculous. You want us to get rid of all of the lights? Yes, every so often I get stuck at a red one. I hate these lights thing. Nobody would say that. You'd be like, no, we need guardrails, we need some lights, this is good. I'm upset, but it's good. We need it. It's the same thing. Like God is saying the commands that I gave you were meant to help you live a life within the parameters of the people that you're meant to be. God still today cares about how we live, and He's given us parameters for how we live. I'll tell you a very simple parameter that all of you know. If you don't sleep for 2 nights in a row, your body's going to start to shut down. How many, if you're honest, if you don't sleep for 1 night, your body starts to shut down? How many of you don't nap in church while I preach, your body starts to shut down? That's like a very simple parameter. I don't care how tough you think you are, how much you post hustle in your Facebook and Instagram thing. If you don't sleep, your body's going to start to shut down. Right? That's just a natural human parameter. More and more scientists are realizing why we have to sleep. But God's like, in the same way in our spiritual lives, God's like, I have certain parameters. If you don't kind of find times to slow down and listen to me, teach you, stretch you, learn for you, trust me. If you don't do that, there's going to be consequences. And some of you have felt those consequences. I felt those consequences in my life. When I've had times where I'm like, I'm going to do what I want, it's going to be fine. And God's like, no, you're not. There's going to be consequences and you're going to feel it. And if we're not careful, we can read books like Hosea and be like, it sounds like God is mean, that's why I'm not a Christian. That's exactly the opposite way to understand the book. It's actually because God loves us that He gives the people these structured parameters, like live this way. So Hosea does this. He goes and he marries Gomer. He has a first son. And then they have another child. I mean, more children? Bro, 1 child would have been enough. No, how to have more children. Here we go. It says this. Gomer conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. And then the Lord said to Hosea, call her Lo Rohama, which means not loved. For I will no longer show love to Israel, that I should at all forgive them. Yet I will show love to Judah. I told you, the southern nation, He's going to deal with it separately. And I will save them, not by bow, sword, or battle, or by horses and horsemen, but I, the Lord their God, will save them. I mean, this is a powerful moment where He's like, this second daughter's got to remind the people how easy they've trusted in so many other things rather than me. How in their success they forgot that it was I who was watching over them. In their blessing, even in winning battles, that they thought that they could just rely on, horses and military strategies and everything was going to be fine, and they didn't realize it was me that was taking care of it. Now, this is a temptation that never goes away. I'll tell you right now. This will never, ever change. All of us are prone to think that we can trust the wrong things when we feel like we're doing fine. All of us. The people of God thought like, hey, this is fine. They had moments where they had incredible power and influence, and they stopped trusting God. They're like, we're doing just great. You know why they stopped trusting God? I'll tell you the secret. You know why? Super easy. Some of you just get this, right? You know why? Because it worked. Power works. If you're a powerful army and you're like, there's 100 of us and there's 5 of them, we should kill them. Nobody's standing around saying we should pray about this. Right? Nobody's saying let's pray before we do this. Nobody's saying let's think about what we should do. Power and influence and violence keeps happening. You know why? Because it works. And Hosea says to the people, it says to us, God doesn't care about what works. God cares about who's going to be obedient. So different. I grew up in a world that thinks like, I just want to do what works. It's called efficiency. It's the great love of efficiency. Like, I'm going to do whatever works. Right? If Christianity works for me, I'm going to believe I would be a Christian. If it doesn't work, I'm going to bail and find something else that works. Until you start reading the Bible. And God's like, by the way, life is not about what works. Life is about how you learn to be obedient. Which one are you going to pick? Because there's a lot of things that you're going to do that are just not going to work. There's a lot of things that we have to learn in life to kind of process with God and say, God, I'm going to be obedient. I'm not sure how this is all going to come together, but I want to be obedient. The people in the book of Hosea believe the lie that we all believe. I'm just going to do what works for me. And if it works and if it doesn't work, I'm not going to be here. And God's like, really? That's how you want this relationship to work? Remember, tomorrow morning when you wake up on your phone, there's going to be a picture there. Wouldn't it be cool if I was able to access your phones and do that? I just thought about that. I don't know. It just came to me. But this idea, like God's like, how are things going? Are you okay with understanding that your success and things just working are not as important as you learning to be obedient? That's why sometimes when we pray, God decides that we don't have the character to handle him answering our prayers, so he doesn't. He's like, you just have to learn to be obedient now. It's a muscle that you have to develop now. Just like anything. It's part of growing up. And when we learn to do this, our hearts remain sensitive. Our hearts really remain sensitive to what God wants to teach us, to what he wants to do, and to how he shows us how much he loves us. But when we don't, we're just like, whatever. Like I prayed, it didn't work. I could do this my way, and I think it'll work. I'll do it my way. It's going to be fine. That's exactly what they do. God's like, oh, wow, that's a good idea. You should try that. And then the last part. One son, a daughter, another son. 3 kids. With Gomer, it says this. After she had weaned Lo Ramah, Gomer had another son. And the Lord said, call him Lo Ami, which means not my people. For you are not my people, and I am not your God. One of the most powerful things God could say to his people. You're no longer my people. Now, I have to tell you something important for you to understand this last part here. And it might be hard to understand, but I want to try to help you visualize it by thinking of a mirror. Okay? Everybody have a mirror at home? Now that your phone, you check your mirror on your phone, right? Now, in the Bible, you have to understand that there's a special relationship that God made with his people. Okay? It's a very special relationship. The only example I have to tell you this, it's like when 2 people get married. Okay? When 2 people get married, everybody who goes to the wedding knows that what they see at the front of the altar is a special relationship. Okay? Now, in good relationships, everybody in that room who's watching a wedding, if you've been to a wedding, you know this, everybody knows that no matter how close I am to the groom or how close I am to the bride, right? My relationship with them is about to change forever after that moment. How many of you agree? Right? If you've ever had your friends, they're like, I have guy friends of mine who got married, and they're like, hey, tomorrow are we going to go out again? I'm like, bro, you're not going out tomorrow. No, yeah, it's going to be the same. I'm just getting married. I'm like, it's not going to be the same. Whatever you think, it's not going to be the same. Yeah, she's going to understand. I'm like, she is, but she's not going to understand. It's not going to be the same. Like, you sometimes want it to be like everything's going to be fine, but the truth is that in a good marriage, it should be different. You decide that this relationship is going to be a special relationship. And that relationship is going to be a model that shapes all the other relationships around you. That's why marriage is so sacred. Because it becomes a picture of changing the whole rhythm of your life. This is why the Bible uses marriage as the picture of what it means when God calls us to follow him. Okay? It's a whole other sermon. But the marriage. Now, when you have this marriage situation, the people who get married, they make a covenant with each other. They decide we're going to commit to one another, and we're going to treat one another differently now than everybody else. Intimacy-wise, I mean, that's the big one that we think of, but relationship, friendship, pain, suffering, grief, all of that stuff gets worked out, right? You're trying to work it out. And is it easy? No way. Super hard. You're like, how do I do this, right? Now, in the Bible, God had a special relationship with Israel. A very special relationship. It was so special that he said to them, you are going to have a special standing among all the people of the world. I'm going to call you, and you're going to be my people, and I'm going to set you apart, and you are going to give a picture to the world of what it looks like when people love me first. Make sense? How many of you would be fine with that? Sign up for that. How many of you are like, I don't want that. I think it's going to be complicated. Let's not sign up for this. It's different things, right? But God's like, I think you're going to be happy to make a covenant with me, God. I think it's a good deal for you guys. Right? You're always trying to think of a deal. Now, covenants are hard for us to understand in our culture. You know why? Because we operate in a world of contracts. Right? When people get married, they have to make a contract, and contracts equal lawyers. The Bible operates in a covenant. The people of God make a covenant with God and say, God, we are going to trust you and we're going to be your people. We're going to model what it's like to follow you. We're going to live this way. And so I want you to understand that it's like a mirror. Okay? Think about having a mirror that you look at. You go to your house every day. You look at this mirror. Every time you look in the mirror, it's a reflection of who you are in the mirror. Israel was the mirror reflection to the world of what it looked like when people surrendered their lives to God. They were supposed to be this mirror. To be like, if you see us, you know what it's like, as we learn to follow God. If you want to know what it's like to really trust God, you kind of have to hang out with us, and you're going to see that, right? Now, I'm just curious. Would people get that experience if they followed you? Would people, if they followed you for 1 week, would they get a glimpse of what it's like to be with somebody that's learning to trust God more and more every day? Would they get that? Now, maybe you'd be like, yeah, I think so. I think I'm learning how to trust God and how to live in a way that honors him, how to do the right thing whether people are watching or not, like to just be obedient and live I think so. Well, the people in the Bible stopped doing this. And so God says to them, the deal that we made that you would be my people and I would be your God is broken now. And it's almost having a mirror that's cracked now, and every time you look in it, you kind of don't see anyone. Like if you had a mirror in your house and I came to visit your house and it was cracked, what would you do with it? It's a very easy question, by the way. So you're like, I think Dom's tricking us. Is there a Greek word for mirror we don't know? No Greek words. If I came to your house and I went to your bathroom, I went in, I'm washing my hands, I look up and the mirror is cracked, I'd leave the bathroom, what do you think I would say to you the first time I see you? Bro, you need a new mirror. IKEA's over here. Like, you want to buy a mirror? Right away, you'd be like, something's broken. This is not going to work. Everybody would say that. God is saying that to Israel. You are no longer my people in such a way that you could be a reflection to others of what it means that you love me. You're no longer the people that I knew and that I wanted you to be, because I wanted to pour out my blessing on you so that other nations would see what it's like when I care for you and how I could care for them. He says, no, you know what? Call your son a name that reminds them they're not my people now. It's not God being mean and saying, I don't like you. It's the people being disobedient saying, we're not living by that anymore. We're going to do what we want. And God's like, if you're going to do that, let's make it official. You're not my people. God, throughout this whole book, as we go in it, you're going to see, he's going to remind them of ways that he tried to show them that he loves them. And then he's like, you didn't do that. I cared about you and I wanted to help you, but you didn't do that. I wanted to make you sensitive to the things that were going to kill you if you left them unattended, but they didn't do that. And I think about this in our lives and the ways that God is still doing that today. The ways that this week, this month, as we move towards Christmas, God is going to try to get our attention. He's going to do it in a gentle way. He's going to speak to us. He's going to invite us to say, hey, you know what? You seem overwhelmed. It's time to slow down and pay more attention to me. He's going to do this. Some of us are going to take that seriously, and some of you maybe are going to ignore that. And Hosea's like, the people kept ignoring God's offer. They kept ignoring God's promise. They kept ignoring. And now Hosea's like, now look what I had to do. I am married to Gomer. We have 3 kids, and she's still sleeping around. Homer's like, Hosea's like, some of you are like, what happened? Welcome back. Okay. Count how many times I'll do that in this series. Okay. Hosea's like, she still hasn't understood how much I love her. We had 1 kid together. I thought that she would get it. We had another kid together. I thought she would get it. We had another kid together. I thought, no, she's going to get it. She still doesn't get it. God's like, you see what it's like when my people don't see me trying to show them how much I love them? This is one of those books in the Bible that I promise you, if you left alone, you probably would not read by yourself. You wouldn't. You're like, it's too sad. Too many sad things in this book. I need some happy stuff. Is there a happy book in the Bible? This is a happy book. This is a book of what it looks like when God says, I love you so much to leave you where you are. That's God saying, you should feel how much I care about you. You should feel how much it matters to me that you're living in a way that will destroy your life. And now you've thought that you can trust all these other things and you think that that's fine. And you think that we can still have a relationship, but we can't. You can't be my people anymore. Hosea, go tell them. Okay, just do it. There's times in my life and in your life, and I pray it happens during this series, where you're going to hear God say to you, I love you in a way that you've never understood yet. Pray if you're new to Christianity, if you're new to church, maybe you're watching online, that as we go through this book and you feel like, wow, that sounds like me, like that sounds like intense. Is God like overreacting? You would hear more of a loving parent saying, I love you so much. Like this is crazy that you would just leave this like alone and think it's going to be fine. I'm going to have the team to come back up. The worship team's going to come back up. And times in my life where I've wrestled with this in my life and saying, God, can you just make me sensitive again? Like there used to be things I used to care about and now I don't care about them anymore. I have a picture here of, just curious, you can go to the picture. How many of you know what this is? Some of you don't know, but maybe you have one. It's a pacemaker. You just put it inside someone's body and it's connected to your heart. And it's meant to really manage the rhythm of your heart. If your heart is off, the rhythm is off, it adjusts it to keep you what? Alive. That's what it's meant to do. You can't see it. It's invisible. And if it works well, nobody even has to know that you have one. The prophets, Hosea, Amos, Zechariah, all the prophets, they were like pacemakers in people's lives. They were like the spiritual rhythm of saying, listen, your heart's doing these weird things, these weird jumps, like something's wrong here inside. And Hosea's like, the people of God are not listening anymore. God's like, we're going to help them listen again. We're going to adjust the rhythm of this pacemaker now. They're going to hear not only that I love them, but they're going to hear something that they really don't want to hear. Nobody wants to hear. That there's consequences if you think you can live life on your terms. There are. It's just the way it is. And you know what? We all think that's a great idea when it works in our favor. We all think it's a great idea when somebody hits us with their car and they pay the bill. There's a consequence. Until the consequences don't work out in our favor, we don't like them. We're like, I don't like that. This sounds weird. It's not weird. It's just the way life works. Maybe for you, God is trying to get your attention. He's trying to help you see that there's areas in your life that you've left unattended, and He's trying to get your attention. And all He wants is for you to know, hey, I love you. And I want you to know what it feels like that I'm your God. I want you to feel what it's like to know that I want to bless you. I want you to feel what it's like for your children and your grandchildren to be blessed because you live the life that honored me now. I want you to feel what that's like. But don't think that can happen on your terms. Don't think that can happen that way. The end of the book of Hosea, if you go all the way to the end, I didn't want to leave you the weight of this marriage, the love affair. Wow. I want to just fast forward, and this is the direction we're going to go in the whole series. If you go to just the last slide, it says this: who is wise? Let them realize these things. Who is discerning? Let them understand. The ways of the Lord are right, the righteous walk in them, but the rebellious stumble in them. I was like, at the end of this book, I hope you become more wise. At the end of this whole story, after we're done going through this for a few weeks, I hope you say, God, I'm becoming more wise. I understand that my natural human self, left by itself, will start to live in a way where I pursue success for my own gain. I think, God, you exist for me and to do what I want. God's like, no. That's not how you're wired. If you do that, everything in you will start to break. You will not be sensitive to my ways. You won't be listening to my voice. You won't make me a priority at all in your life. Don't do that. Last week I had a situation where it was a moment in my own life where God was saying, Dom, are you going to live in such a way that honors me when people are not looking? Are you going to live in such a way where I can use you in your community, with your family, with your kids, when, you know what, it's nobody's business. It's just between me and God. I often do that. You ever do that? It's not your business. Leave me alone. And God's like, no. If you're going to teach on this book, I'm going to have to live this book. And I had a situation at our house, and it's a funny, crazy story. I was away for a few days, and we had someone, some of you know the story, we had someone come to our house and trim some of our hedges in our backyard, and I was away. And when they did this, they cut like a bell wire outside. They just cut the whole wire, you know, and I'm out of town, and my wife is like, there is no God, you know, and the internet's not working, and the kids are like, no internet, oh my God, like, you know, they start getting a rash. If you have kids it's my kids get a rash. No internet, you want some water? No internet. All right, internet's more important than water. So they're losing it, and I'm like, I'm out of town, I get back, you know, I call the guy who's coming, he's like, I'm sorry, you know, and we have to call Bell, and so it was so bad that even our neighbor lost, like, internet, phone, all this stuff, right? So the Bell technicians come, and they come to our house, and they're like, what happened here? I'm like, I don't know, like, I wasn't there, we don't know what happened, and you're trying to be like, a squirrel, maybe it was a squirrel, chewed on a wire like this big? Yeah, big squirrel looked like a tiger squirrel, like that. So he's like, it looked like somebody cut this wire. And finally we got to the point that called, and they're like, you know, it's going to take 2 techs to fix this. It's going to be $600 for sure. I'm like, what? I might have to fix it myself. And you guys know what a joke that is, right? Don't fix anything. So this all happens. Fine. I tell the guy who kind of did it, I'm like, listen, it costs a lot of money. We have to figure out what's going on. And then as I talk to the Bell people, they're like, you know what? It's the first time this happens. We're probably not going to charge you. And I have a moment. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell the guy who cut my hedges that Bell's not going to charge me. It's none of his business. I'm just going to say, too bad. I'll pay you. How many of you would be tempted to do that? Just me? I'm going to go sit down. I'm doing this sermon all over again. Bring it again. all of us will be like, wait a second. Okay, so I don't have to pay the rest of this. I gave half. He's gonna give me some money. I'm gonna make money on this. And I had a moment where I was like, it doesn't matter. If it works, if it looks successful, if it's to my advantage, God cares about obedience. Do the right thing. Just do the right thing. So I called the guy and I said, hey, I gotta tell you, I owe you money. He's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I found out. The guy on the phone honestly was freaking out. He's like, you're gonna give me more money. I'm like, yeah, it didn't end up. He was just like, wow, okay, he didn't know what to say. He's like, we're gonna film. On va s'arranger, mon ami. I'm like, all right, bro, I'll do that. I'm gonna give him a hug when I see him. But it was just a moment to be like, we are living in a world where people are just dying to see us live by a different standard. It's not trying to be holier than thou. It's not being like, I went to church every day. It's just they're like, you live by a different rhythm. Like, what is that? It's the Spirit of God's pace for like, this is what it means to trust in me. This is what it looks like to be obedient. This is what it means to know that it matters to me how you live. And you will experience my blessing, don't you worry. So can you be open to that as we go through this series in your own life? Whether people are looking or not, whether people know or not, just do the right thing. Live in a way that honors God. And as we do that, we're not earning God to do something special for us. We're just saying, God, we're learning what it's like to be your people. So I'm going to have a stand. And let's just sing this song as we close. As just a prayer. A prayer saying, God, we want to be open to the temptations in our day, in our culture now. It's different than maybe the people in the Bible, but we have our own challenges. And we're going to have to learn what it's like to trust you in a time where everyone's like, oh, it's fine, just do whatever you want. Nobody cares. God's not even real. Then the prophets, you see, God's like, I'm very real, and I see what's going on. And I want to bless you because I love you. So careful how you live.